Before we get right into it this week, listeners, I just want to say the freedom and exchange of dissenting opinions is very important to me. It's a standard I hold myself to, and it's one of the reasons I started this podcast in the first place. It's important to be exposed to different arguments in order to gain a better understanding of issues in the world. Otherwise, we just sit in an echo chamber of our own constantly validated beliefs without being challenged. One must listen to other points of view, even if they make you uncomfortable, in order to learn more about oneself. And that's what I aim to do. Enjoy the episode. For months now, listeners, I have been attempting to teach a lesson in my history class. I have been unsuccessful for several reasons. One, I am not a state-accredited teacher, and two, the lesson is supposedly not relevant to the curriculum. Well, I have my own show now, so I'm going to talk about what I damn well please, and this week, beloved listeners, I'm starting a new segment called A Glimpse of the Past, where I'm finally going to talk about a subject very close to my heart: the Battle of Flamborough Head. September 23rd, 1779. A worn ship bobs across the frothy waves of the North Sea. Her name, the Bonhomme Richard. In North America, 4,000 miles away, the Revolutionary War rages on. But here, news of the war doesn't reach its combatants. Commodore John Paul Jones of the hastily constructed American Continental Navy sails his retrofitted French trade ship along the British coast with a cohort of American and French sailors, wreaking havoc any way he can. On this particular evening, his target is a British trade convoy under the protection of Captain Richard Pearson at the helm of the HMS Serapis and the accompanying gunship Countess of Scarborough, held by Captain Piercy. By the 23rd, the convoy and its escorting vessels are approaching Flamborough Head, headlands off the coast of Yorkshire. Jones rapidly moves to intercept, along with his accompanying squadron, the frigate Alliance under Captain Landau, the frigate Pallas under Captain Cotonou, and the brigantine Vengeance under Captain Racot. 2 p.m., Jones sights the convoy. He positions his small fleet into a line and begins approaching the convoy. Across the divide, Pearson sights the American forces, though he can't be sure of their identity yet. Nevertheless, he orders the convoy to make a break for the safety of Scarborough and moves into position, along with the Countess, to put a barrier between himself and the vulnerable trade ships. The ships arrive in position, sizing up the opposing forces. Though the Franco-American contingent has the advantage in numbers, they are severely outclassed. Bonhomme Richard is rated for 34 guns. She holds 40. Her rigging sags and her hull is battered, betraying the hastily modified vessel's mercantile origins. The Serapis, in contrast, is a 44-gun fifth rate, her guns glistening and her rigging taut. This is a machine of war. Sunset. The two ships prepare for a fight, about a pistol away from each other now. Squabbling with his fellow captains, Jones begins preparing to take the British forces on solo. Pearson signals first, asking the American ship's name, country of origin, purpose. Jones responds evasively. When pressed again, Jones replies with a volley from his broadsides. Serapis responds in kind, tearing through the Bonhomme Richard's hull like tissue. Many of her best gunners are killed or severely wounded. It is at this point Jones realizes he does not have the situation entirely under control. The Pallas is headed for the fight, but is still too far off to offer assistance. Thinking fast, Jones brings the Richard alongside the Serapis's bow, and, when the opportunity presents itself, launches grapple lines to haul the two ships together. The Countess of Scarborough, lingering off to the side, cannot get a clear shot on the American flagship without damaging the Serapis as well. She holds her fire. 8 p.m. The two ships are still locked together, exchanging volleys. All but 3 of Bonhomme Richard's cannons are disabled. Still, those 3 have done their job. Serapis's mast, while still intact, is weakening. Captain Landais and Cotonou of the Alliance and Pallas notice the Countess and assume that Piercy is attempting to join the fight. Seeing the 2 American ships rapidly approaching from either side, Piercy begins a gradual retreat into the wind. 8:30 p.m. In an effort to break loose from the Richard's grapples, the Serapis drops anchor, intending to use the American flagship's momentum against her. Instead, Jones's crew turns the ship's motion into a rotating pattern, swinging both vessels in the opposite direction and locking them tighter together as Serapis's anchor tangles. Serapis continues firing, tearing massive holes in Bonhomme Richard's hull. Along the way, the Countess of Scarborough and Pallas continue to distance themselves from the main fight. The two ships exchange broadside fire for a while, but Piercy, with 7 of his guns disabled and catching sight of the Alliance getting closer and closer, knows he is out of options. The Countess strikes her colors and surrenders. As Piercy surrenders, Alliance loops back around to fire on Serapis. Broadside shot tears through her top deck, also impacting Bonhomme Richard. British prisoners aboard the Richard, freed by the master-at-arms following the blast, swarm onto the deck. Jones, furious, attempts to shoot his own master-at-arms in the head. The gun misfires, so Jones simply cracks him across the skull with the handle. One prisoner, attempting to take advantage of the situation, lunges at Jones, only to be shot by one of his remaining officers. The other prisoners pause at this, and Jones calls out to them that they had better get busy fixing the ship or get busy drowning. Order is restored as the prisoners begin working with the crew to restore her seaworthiness. Bonham Richard's ineffective disabled guns and the distance of the rest of the American frigates meant that Serapis has plenty of time to fire on the Richard without interruption. The damage to her hull is so great that broadside shots from Serapis fly through one side and out to the other without hitting anything in between. This is a particularly stressful time for Jones, who decides to take a quick power nap in the Richard's chicken coop. His absence does not go unnoticed, and the rumor quickly spreads above deck that the Commodore is dead. The 3 remaining deck officers decide amongst themselves that it would be best to strike their colors and surrender. Below decks, Jones is roused from his slumber by a particularly harsh broadside shot. Pearson, from the deck of the Serapis, calls out to the officers, "Do you strike your colors?" Jones, standing defiantly on his devastated vessel, calls back, "It had not occurred to me, but I am determined to make you strike them." At this point, the crew and officers of Bonham Richard realize 2 things. 1, Commodore Jones is not dead, and 2, the battle is not over. Meanwhile, sailors from Jones's crew climb across the intertwined rigging of both ships, firing small arms and dropping incendiary grenades onto the decks. By some stroke of fortune, one grenade bounces down the hatch into the artillery hold. The powder stores ignite, spreading burning gunpowder and subsequent explosions across the Serapis's lower artillery deck. Sailors leap into the sea to extinguish their burning clothes, and 5 of the guns are disabled. At the same time, broadside fire from the Richard finally finishes off the Serapis's weakened mast. It crumbles and crashes into the sea. Jones musters a boarding party to seize the crippled vessel, leaving Pearson with no other choice but to strike his colors. As Jones and his men take stock of affairs, they come to the decision that, as Bonham Richard is more than halfway filled with water, they would do best to commandeer the limping Serapis. After a night of repairs and transferring crew members, the Serapis is in sailing condition again, stripped of her HMS prefix and flying American colors. And so, Commodore John Paul Jones sets off again to bring fear to the British Navy across the coast of England, winning his place in history alongside other well-respected sociopaths of the Americas like Andrew Jackson, Lyndon Johnson, and Alec Baldwin. This has been a glimpse of the past. Now I'd like to take you to an interview we recorded earlier this week with this episode's special musical guest. Take a listen. Welcome back to Into the Arts, where we like to spotlight student work from around the soda community. This week, I'm with Lil Camo and Lil Jug, 2 local SoundCloud rappers who, as we speak, are gearing up for their artistic process. Lil Camo is eating a jug of beans, and Lil Jug is sniffing a pile of money. Lil Camo and Lil Jug, thanks so much for joining us.
Let's get it!
What's up, then?
Now, I just want to ask you, Lil Camo, when you consider your composition process, where does the music come from?
You already know, it come from the trap. It come from the streets, you feel me, Sean? You already know, man. Let's get it!
Now, you 2 are a songwriting and performance duo, correct?
Yeah, bruh. We like brothers, G.
So you have collaborated on tracks. Which one of you would you say is more the front man, and which one is the behind-the-scenes powerhouse?
You already know, I be on the computer sometimes. You feel me? Sometimes we be behind the lyrics. You already know, sometimes we be cutting up them bricks, you feel me, Sean? It be like a duo, you know? I don't even know what the fuck you saying.
And Lil Jug?
Yeah, man, we just take turns doing everything, bruh. Just like he do the beats and shit, and I just rap. You know, we just take turns and shit, bro.
While I have you here with us, would you care to do a freestyle for our listeners at home?
B. We need a beat, though. We pull it up. I got hella beats, you feel me, Sean? We got Kodak, we got 1000 Band Fonny. We got a little ad, you know, fuck YouTube. Put my ads on my videos and shit. Yeah. Fun little cam on this bitch. Rockin' fucking real tree. Hey. If fucking little camo. I only wear a real tree. Fuck that camo green. Big booty bitch, I'm a fiend. Hey. A little camel in a fucking cut. Big Kush. Hey, big rapper shit. Big Gucci. All I rock is Gucci, Gucci, Gucci. Rope gang. This little jug in the cut.
I don't even freestyle, bro. I gotta have a fucking backwood. I gotta sit down and write my lyrics, bro.
You know, we pulling up 12 ounces in the fucking act. You know what I'm saying? I'ma hit a lick on your moms. I'ma scam your auntie. Real PayPal shit. Real big bands. It's a scam. Taliban. You know what I'm saying? Big rapper shit.
True cooperation. Well, Lil Camo and Lil Jug, thanks so much for joining us. And listeners, take a listen.
Muffin man, bitch, I got a saying. Muffin man, drop a ban on a bitch, she a snitch. Fuck that bitch, kill a snitch with that 30 clip, make a flip, Muffin man.
That was Muffin Man by my guests this week, Lil Camo and Lil Jug. Their work is available on SoundCloud. An exchange of ideas only called Debate 2017. Insert awesome music here. And this week, our debaters are in this corner, Nelson G. Say hello.
Hi.
And of course, Earl M.,
That's
a
me.
regular of this show.
Hello.
Well, let's dive right into it. The angle this week is philosophy, the big questions of life. Let's keep it loose. Let's keep it flowing. Question 1, does human life have essential worth? Nelson?
Okay, so I believe that human life has essential worth from a variety of angles. We can either look at what would be called intrinsic value or desired independent value or objective value. If we have intrinsic value, then it is good merely for us to exist in the simple sense of existence being valuable. We can also look at intrinsic value or value of human creation and influence, in which case we would look at who created, say, the microphones that we're recording on, or who created light bulbs, or who created the phone. The list goes on. As every human being creates things, even, say, young children in preschool create art projects, which when presented to their parents, provide for the happiness of their parents. In this case, it could be argued that people have value based on the things that they create.
I'm actually gonna hop in and disagree with you there. I would say the only value humans have is their economic value in slavery. They produce a lot of value, you know, whether it's their art projects, whether it's their mics and such, but human life itself has no particular value to anybody that isn't using it for labor. You know, you simply existing is of no value to anyone unless you're providing a good or service, whether it's art, whether it's healthcare, whether it's some kind of technology. But no, I don't think you simply existing does anybody any good.
Okay, then going back on that, even if we were to disregard human intrinsic value, there is still the extrinsic value of our creations and of the goods and services that humans provide, which without humans would not exist, therefore giving humans value by association.
What makes something valuable?
That's honestly a very good question. I would like you to, what's something that you define as valuable?
Nothing. Nothing's valuable. I guess sex is valuable. We're repopulating the planet, but that's only...
Wait. If sex is valuable because repopulation of the planet is valuable, wouldn't repopulation of the planet require humans, which therefore makes humans valuable?
No.
How do you plan to repopulate the planet without humans?
I don't think I understand. Repopulation is valuable for preservation of culture, but humans being valuable themselves are not so much as their sex organs are. For example, if you had like an Amazon race of all females, the sperm would be super valuable, but the brain connected to it wouldn't be, if you know what I mean.
That's a great segue if we're talking about emotion and the treatment of others in this, as we've touched upon with the value of people and such, into the next question, which is, are we essentially obligated to treat others with dignity?
Okay, so I think we need to define our terms a little bit. When you say obligated, you can either mean socially obligated, as in you should in order just to be a good person, and then you can be obligated as in state, as in, you know, hate speech laws and those kind of things. And we also need to define dignity, and we can talk about that in positive or negative rights. For the listeners, positive rights is the right to have something done to you for example, provided something, and a negative right is the right to have something not done to you. Now, my position on this is, well, I would define dignity as entirely a negative right. The right to have things not done to you, whether it's not being aggressed upon or anything like that. Well, it's certainly nice to have dignity. No, I don't think we're obligated in any sense of the word, to treat anybody with respect. I believe respect is certainly, and your first state of meeting somebody, of course you're not going to respect them if you know nothing about them. So, no, respect is earned, not obligated.
I think there's a difference between you bring up respecting someone upon first meeting them and how that's not necessarily like a feasible thing because you don't know them yet. I think there's a difference between respecting someone and treating someone with respect. I think to act respectfully towards someone does not necessarily have to mean that you respect them. I also would like to bring up the phrase treat others how you would like to be treated. And I think this is the essential answer to this question. As humans, we naturally like to feel valued and respected, and how there's not a way for us to expect people to treat us with respect as we are predisposed to desire if we do not treat them with respect.
Well, let me ask you this about treat people the way you'd like to be treated. Say we have opposing viewpoints. If I'd like to be treated one way, but you would hate being treated that way, should I still treat you that way?
I think that it depends on what the viewpoint is, and I also think that that could be something that we could discuss, and then necessarily does not have bearing on this argument, because if we were to discuss that you wanted to be treated a certain way and I wanted to be treated a different way in a similar respect, I think that we could treat each other in that way, and that doesn't necessarily add up to respect, which is a very basic thing that the majority of people naturally appreciate.
I guess what I'm getting at here is that respect and dignity, for that matter, is just so subjective. You know, everybody has totally different terms on how they think they should be treated and how everybody should be treated. And there's two things really. One, if you just go around asking every single person you ever talk to, oh, how do you personally think that you should be treated? You know, you're just never going to get anything done. You can never even have a real conversation with that thing kind of looming over every single thing you're talking about. And secondly, when it comes to that kind of thing, what if I think, you know, no matter how much you want to be respected, what if I think that maybe it's bad for you? Me doing what you call respect, I personally think is really bad for, you know, your mental health or your state of well-being. Should I still be doing something that I think is personally bad for you because you call it respect?
I think that is a discussion that we could have, and I think that that is a specific scenario that does not necessarily answer the question, are we obligated to treat others with dignity? I also think that treating people with dignity, a part of that would be being willing to have those conversations when they do arise, not necessarily like upon meeting someone for the first time you say, how would you like to be treated? But in your interactions with that person, if they were to ask you not to do something, then you could do that, or you could have a discussion with them about that and treat their ideas with the respect that you would give something that you believe deserves an argument to be heard.
Well, what if you don't think it deserves an argument? What if what they define as respect is something totally just out of the realm of possibility and something that at least to your mind is just totally unfeasible and ridiculous? Does it still deserve a debate?
I think you can still discuss things that you find ridiculous.
Well, then how do we get anything done? If you've got to debate every single thing that you happen to not agree with, you're just never going to get anything done. And there's just certain things that there's just some things that are out of the realm of reason, and we can define those or we can't. But if you end up accepting every single viewpoint as equally valid and equally reasonable, then you're just so overflooded and stuffed, like clotted arteries with opinions and definitions of respect. Well, A, you're not going to get anything done, and B, you don't even know what respect is anymore because everyone's got such different definitions of it.
So does that just mean that you don't treat anybody with respect? Is that the solution to that?
I think the solution is to treat everybody with the kind of respect you feel they deserve.
So you would say then that some people do not deserve respect?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you give an example of someone who wouldn't deserve respect?
Well, I mean, again, it's super subjective. Let me give my point of view. God, I don't not respect a whole lot of people. Maybe the mentally disabled.
Excuse me?
Well, I mean, okay, well, let me say this. When you're talking to maybe, let's say, a retarded person or someone with, limited thought capabilities, would it be respectful or patronizing to talk to them as you would a person, like in a conversation like you and I are having right now? Would it be respectful or patronizing to talk to them in really slow words and baby voices? Would it be respectful to just talk to them with words or pictures? Well, no one can define any one of that, and everybody's going to have a different opinion on whether what you're doing is respectful or not. So, I guess my main point here is that whatever anybody calls respect, somebody is on the planet's going to disagree with. And if you want to be consistent, that's somebody that you disagree with. You have to have their opinion too. And it just goes in circles and circles. Nobody can define respect.
This brings me to one of my favorite examples on this topic. In a relationship between two people with penises, it would be inherently unfair for one person to expect to have their dick sucked without at least offering to suck their partner's dick. Isn't this the same thing, the same essential issue with respect?
Not at all.
How so?
Well, imagine you don't want to have your dick sucked. It's like charity. There's a difference between forcing equality and having it done kind of naturally, and equality of respect or equality of dick suckingness. But I guess what I mean is, you earn having your dick sucked by doing something. You don't ask to have it totally equally. Otherwise, you'd have to suck each other's dicks at the same time. You know what I mean? I kind of understand the analogy, but what I mean is, also, this goes back to the subjectivity of respect. What if one person doesn't like having their dick sucked? What if they prefer getting their ass rimmed instead?
But then wouldn't it be appropriate for them to have some compensation for their action?
Well, not at all. What if the one you want to rim you doesn't enjoy licking hole? Are they obligated to do it just because they got their dick sucked earlier?
Not necessarily.
Well, then we agree. I think we agree. I mean, I guess the thing I have a problem with is just because somebody sucks my dick, I'm not obligated to do anything back to them.
But it would be polite and customary to.
Well, it would be. Doesn't mean I should.
We seem to have we seem to have arrived in a very sticky circle. So let's just move on from this stalemate. And as we are running out of time, let's move into this one final big question, the big one. Are humans inherently good or evil?
I don't necessarily think that humans are born either good or evil. I think that actions that develop or patterns that develop in people can be either good or evil, but babies have no stored information when they are born about what is right and wrong. All of that is learned from their cultural influences around them. So I think it is unfair to say that someone is inherently good or inherently evil.
I think it's kind of not the wrong question to ask, but a pointless question to ask. I'm going to bring it back to subjectivity, and I think we need to define good and evil. So go ahead.
No, actually, I don't even want to. I feel like it's dangerous oversimplification to just define good and evil. I feel like it's a spectrum, and it's difficult.
If you back it up a little bit, because maybe this will help start you guys on your conversation. If you back that up a little bit, is there any such thing? Is anything inherently good or evil? Or is it always what humans or otherwise give it value? Because then you can start to talk about if people are good or evil, but besides, before that, is anything inherently good or bad?
Well, there's this quote from this guy Ludwig von Mises that I think is really interesting, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it goes something like, humans always naturally act in self-interest, and even when they think they don't, for example, say you give to charity, you think that's not always in your self-interest, but you're gaining something out of it. You feel like, the big man on campus, you're giving to charity, you got a big, you're giving out money. And in that respect, it's impossible for anything to really be, I guess in Western society, good is commonly referred to as what's good for the many over the good of the one. And I have a giant problem with that, mostly because trampling on the rights of the individual to service the many is just something that's, killed so many people under the guise of equality over the last 100 years.
I absolutely agree with that. I think from not necessarily the same lens, but I do think that the way that Western civilization defines good is generally good for the many. But I think that is what is good for the many can be bad for the few. And then at that point, it's almost impossible to define what is good because it depends on whose lens you're looking at it from. And it's unfair to look at something just from the majority lens because that leaves out a lot of viewpoints.
I agree. Let me ask you this. For the whole good of the many thing, do you think it's ever appropriate to how do I put this? to take away one person's rights to give more rights to the majority?
Can you give like an example scenario where that would be the case?
Well, sure. There's a real classic one. Say there are 4 men trapped on a canoe in the Pacific Ocean, and they're all starving. Should one of them eat the fattest one? Or should all 3, have the right? Not the right. Are they in the wrong if they eat the fattest one, taking away his rights to serve the greater good? Causing a negative effect to one person in order to positively affect 3.
Well, I think if we were going to go with the logic of valuing each life equally, then theoretically in that situation, the value of the 3 lives would outweigh the value of the 1.
I see.
But I also don't think that is a situation that much good can come out of either way. Because either they're all going to die. That was the scenario, correct? Was that if one of them was not eaten, they would all die?
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's not really a positive outcome in that, because either way someone dies.
Yeah, I mean, can I take that even just a little bit further and then say if there's 3 men trapped in a canoe and the one man eats the other 2 in order to survive? I mean, it's pretty much you're experiencing the same thing, except the margin is a little bit slimmer. But considering that either they'll all die, or one of them will live and 2 of them will die, then you've just flipped it around, and the good of the one outweighed the good of the many, and it still ended up with a net change of good.
I still believe the morally correct option is for nobody to eat anybody, and while it maybe results in the most death, if we're just going by what is ethically and morally correct, then nobody aggressed upon anybody else. Nobody took away one another's right, even though all 3 died. So it might be the saddest outcome, might have the most death involved, but I think that's a far superior outcome and represents humanity a lot better than if all 3 kind of starve in solidarity rather than somebody taking away the rights of another.
I would absolutely agree with that from a moral standpoint, that has been established that it is morally wrong to kill someone. And I think that it would be the most, not necessarily like the happiest for everybody, but it would definitely be the most like morally correct to not kill anybody in that situation.
Gotcha. I have a question. What do you think? Do you think humans have any intrinsic rights? Not under government, just as people.
I would say that the lack of proof of where rights come from does not necessarily mean that the rights don't exist.
Well, sure they do. How can you say something exists without any proof?
People say God exists without any proof.
And that's just as ridiculous, don't you think?
I think it is unfair to call entire religious institutions ridiculous.
Well, there's more proof for God than there is of rights. At least they have a Bible to back it up.
So if I were to produce a book of rights out of the ground, then there would be proof.
It's called the Bill of Rights.
And God bless America.
I mean, it would, if 10,000 years from now they dug it out of the ground and said, oh, the Book of Rights exists, well, that would be just as ridiculous as the Mormon Church is today. Sorry, Mr. Trump.
Well, the studio's getting crowded and the air is getting heated, but we seem to have come to a bit of a slight understanding. And as we are out of time, I'd like to thank you both for being on the show. Any closing remarks or plugs you'd like to give?
Party.
All right. Errol?
Taxation is theft.
I thought I heard the old man say, leave her, Johnny, leave her. Tomorrow ye will get your pay, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is long and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Oh, the wind was foul and the sea ran high. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. She shipped it green and none went by, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is long and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. I hate to sail on this rotten tub. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. No grog allowed and rotten grub. And it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is long and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. We swear by her oath for want of more. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. But now we're through, so we'll go on shore, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is long and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave.